We are live now.
All right. Thanks, Olawumi. So just a quick reminder for everyone, so this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. So if we could just do our best to make sure our video and audio is on for the recording. Otherwise, jumping into it, so I'd like to call today's meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee to order at 4:36, 21st of August, 2025. Before we go any further, just like to acknowledge the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognises that we are all treaty people. So just do a quick roll call before we get too far into it. So first up, if you just say you're here or raise a hand. Vice Chair Malena.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hello, members.
Thank you. Councillor John Young, I believe, isn't here just yet. Adelaide Burkham. Don't think we have Adelaide yet. Holly Woodall.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Elizabeth Pugh. Don't think we have Elizabeth yet. Peter Zimmer. No Peter yet. Maggie Hope Simpson.
I'm here. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Great, thank you. Roseanne LeBlanc.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Glenn Babcock has just let us know he's stranded in Ontario. Flight's cancelled, so he won't be able to join. Next, we have new member Stephanie Johnson-Lorette. Stephanie's here. So Stephanie's stepping in the EAC position that Annika recently left. And then lastly, Alexei Katsanis, new member as well.
Here. Hello. Good afternoon, folks.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. And tonight, I believe we'll also have David McIsaac and Mark Anina joining from HRM. So we'll introduce them properly a little bit later. Perfect. So jumping straight into it, I'll try and move pretty quickly so we can get to the discussions and allow a bit more time. So moving on to the approval of the minutes from our meeting of 19th of June 2025. Were there any errors or omissions that anyone would like to note from last meeting's minutes? Sounds like no. Has that been the case? I'd like to call for a motion that the minutes of our meeting 19th of June 2025 be approved as circulated.
Holly will so move.
Thank you, Holly. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it. It's Roseanne.
Thank you, Roseanne. Great. So all those in favour of the motion that the minutes be approved, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And any opposed, say nay. Perfect. So the motion carries. Moving on to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Olawumi, are there any additions or deletions from the clerk's office?
No additions or deletions received from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Do our members have any items they'd like to add to the order of business for today's meeting? No. So I'd like to call for a motion that the agenda be approved.
I'll move that. Malena?
Thank you, Malena.
I'll
And a
second
second.
it, Alexei.
Thank you. So all those in favour that the agenda be approved, please say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Right. And all those opposed, say nay. Great. So that motion carries. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Call for declaration of interest. So are there any committee members tonight that would like to declare a conflict of interest based on the agenda? No, I think we're all good. We don't have any consideration of deferred business, correspondence, petitions and delegations. So Olawumi, did the clerk's office receive any correspondence?
No correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Okay, and any petitions received?
No petitions received from the clerk's office.
Perfect, and no presentations. There were no information items brought forward. So moving into reports, discussions. So we covered that pretty quickly, which is great. So first up, I'd like to invite David McIsaac, so the Manager, Active Transportation. So he's going to be sharing an orientation presentation, so sort of covering what this committee, a little more history about this committee and what we can and sort of can't do. So I'll pass that over to David.
Olawumi, do you mind doing the presentation or posting it for me?
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
I'll do that.
I have like a 0% success rate of sharing presentations using Zoom in the browser. So I'll save us 2 minutes if you folks watching me try to do that. So hi everybody, my name is David McIsaac. I'm the manager of the Active Transportation Group, and we were talking a couple weeks ago, Olawumi and folks in the clerk's office, and thought it just might, there's a lot of new members on the committee, and what I thought we would do with this presentation is give probably about 5 or 6 slides just on ATAC. And then just some kind of high level pieces of information about active transportation as it manifests itself within HRM, just to give you a general overview. And it's still tons of information. So obviously happy to answer any questions or follow up on anything. So next slide, please. So quickly, we'll do a little bit on the historical role of the committee and some recent work that the clerk's office has done to kind of look a bit at the future of the committee. I'll give a bit of an overview of active transportation planning in HRM. Talk a little bit about the groups, like the business units within HRM that play a role and who they are, and mostly just examples, but again, just to try to give folks a bit of a flavor. Talk a bit about the money and the budgets that we allocate to active transportation. High level reflection on successes and challenges implementing AT and HRM, and then just a slide on some potential things for you folks to think about for the committee going forward. Next slide. So this committee was created back in 2006. I believe one of its rationales for being created was there was an active transportation plan that was passed right around that time. So, excuse me. This committee was part of that phase of implementing active transportation here. If you look at the terms of reference, that middle wordy bullet says that the mandate of the Active Transportation Committee is to advise the Transportation Standing Committee on all matters relating to active transportation in HRM. It's pretty vague. Transportation Standing Committee, for folks who may not know, is a committee of about 5 or 6 HRM counselors that kind of focus in on transportation mobility issues. We've also got like an audit and finance committee and a community a planning committee and a couple of others, but Transportation Standing Committee is sort of the standing committee, I guess. But so anything that related to transportation, most things related to transportation decisions that would go to regional council, would go to the Transportation Standing Committee first for their vetting and questioning and approval. And then it will go to transportation. And if it doesn't get approved, then, you know, it comes back to staff and we would do another kick of the can. And I guess it doesn't say that, but the third bullet in the mandate is that the ATAC has sort of been a key group for HRM staff to go to and engage with during planning and program development. Sort of just any kind of street recap or complete streets or bike project, or you know, we updated the AT grant program a few years ago and that went. So we like to go to ATAC to, you know, before we go to council, mostly part of the planning process, just to make sure you folks as citizen reps and as representatives of your groups are aware and have an opportunity to provide feedback and make your constituencies, you know, aware of what we're up to. Next slide. Now, something that happened just in the last couple of years that I think is definitely relevant to the committee and definitely relevant to how you folks go forward is that we did, or the clerk's office did a large kind of review of all of the standing committees and advisory committees that had formed over the years. And just kind of review them to see if they're relevant and still, you know, functioning and worth continuing on. In part because, you know, it's a lot of resources for the clerk's office to kind of support these. It's a lot of time and effort for volunteers to sit on them. And so the good news for ATAC is that it was one of just 2 committees that were deemed sort of like still current, still valuable, still kind of relevant to the work of the municipality to continue to keep. And so there was this committee and the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee. And I don't know how many others. I think there was, you know, maybe as many as a dozen that the decision was made to dissolve them. And if you want more information on that, I have you can go to the report there at the July 9th, 2024 Regional Council meeting. And just a couple more slides on this. So they decided, or they recommended, to keep ATAC, but next slide. They are recommending amendments to your terms of reference. These haven't happened yet, but so I guess like just that first row there says the committee will provide timely advice to transportation standing committees on matters related to budget, infrastructure, education, policy, and public awareness. And the decision was to take budget out just because the way HRM builds its budget, there was really no kind of legitimate way to go to ATAC first on that. So we just recommended taking that out. Second one was a reference to remove the annual bike week, which doesn't take place anymore. And then the rest of it was you know, those items around providing advice, feedback, guidance, those we thought should stay. Next slide. So this is kind of some of the work to come forward. So we want to, there is sort of something that says you will prepare and submit an annual report to the Transportation Standing Committee, which has never happened. So we thought, well, if it hasn't happened, maybe it ought not to be in the terms of reference. But I think that this might be something that we come back and talk to you folks about, see if we keep that. And then there's kind of in your mandate that says that you will perform such other duties as directed by the Transportation Standing Committee, and that was going to be reviewed just to kind of see if that should stay. So so more to come on all this stuff, but I guess coming out of that, the good news is, you know, through that process, you know, we decided and council agreed that ATAC was worth keeping. And there will be some opportunities to fine tune and update the terms of reference I don't know when exactly. It's the clerk's job to do that, but probably in the next year. All right, I might pause there and just see if there are any questions on any of that, because I'm going to move on to kind of a new subject. Roseanne?
Yeah, thanks. This is really interesting and very timely presentation. So I'm really interested. So a quick question in terms of the amending the mandate. So what's the process? What input do we have in the process to amend? And is it the clerk's office that makes the final decision? What's the process for the amendment?
Is the clerk's office to lead it. I suspect, and I will commit on behalf of them to that, they will come to the committee once they kind of get back into that work maybe, and just sort of re-engage you folks on it. But I checked with Olomi's colleague Laura yesterday, and they don't have a timeline yet on when they're going to start this. But I think you'll have an opening just to discuss that with them. So it's to come.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I don't have more specifics on that. All right, next slide, please. So just kind of like, so I kind of gave you all the official stuff, but just sort of historically, kind of the typical contributions to AT have been feedback to HRM staff on any kind of functional planning project, programs and development. We've brought them to you first. You have, or your committee or your predecessors have proposed actions to the Transportation Standing Committee. So ATAC itself can't direct staff to do anything, but you can pass a motion to ask the Transportation Standing Committee to direct the CAO to do XYZ. So that's kind of the process. And just a recent example of that, at some point last year, actually Milena's group Walk and Roll had been doing some work on active school travel. They came to the committee and kind of gave a presentation on their work. And coming out of that, ATAC requested that the Transportation Standing Committee direct staff to do some work to initiate an active and safe routes to school program, active school travel program. Sorry. So that work is just getting started here, but anyway, to me, it was like a good example of your committee kind of seeing this as a priority and moving it on. The other kind of example is that, again, about 2 years ago now, the e-scooters were appearing on the streets and there was concerns. So there was some work done by your chair, the past chair, working with folks here with some recommendations to HRM kind of going forward if we were to continue this. So that was shared in the committee and you folks kind of agreed on it. And when we were developing the shared micromobility program, that was something that we referenced in terms of things like, helmet laws, in terms of maximum speeds, in terms of like where they should go, that kind of thing. And then I guess the other contribution, and I hear this from you folks regularly, is it's a really good opportunity to network and hear what each other's doing. So sometimes members of ATAC ask for an opportunity to make a presentation about their group's activities or priorities or something like that. So it's a good way for different groups of interest to share information. Next slide. So just now I'm kind of stepping a little bit away from the Active Transportation Advisory Committee and just giving you folks a high level overview of how AT kind of manifests itself at HRM. So we have kind of two main plans that we follow. The Active Transportation Priorities Plan, which goes back to 2014, and the Integrated Mobility Plan from 2027. And I have a bit more information on those in a later slide. We also are mentioned and and have actions in a bunch of other HRM plans. So, for example, the road safety plan has a number of actions and initiatives around, pedestrian and bicyclist safety. The center plan, which is really kind of a land use plan, had a fairly strong section on mobility and spoke to the importance of walking and bicycling for the achievement of their plan. Rural recreation is another one, and anyway, I could go on with a few, but just to kind of give you the sense that it's reasonably well integrated across kind of different types of functions in the municipality from a planning perspective. Next slide, please. So just active transportation priorities plan, there are a total of 39 recommendations. The kind of key 3 objectives are, basically to create more infrastructure and to connect it, to increase the number of people that are walking and cycling for everyday trips, and to promote and educate people about active transportation. So one kind of element of that plan, and I've got a little snip of the Dartmouth plan just there as an image, is these candidate bike route and multi-use pathway route maps. So if you look at that map, that's kind of the Dartmouth in the circ, and sort of all those lines there represent sort of candidate routes that HRM should try to build, over time. So the previous plan almost had like every street and corridor in HRM as a candidate route, but that was impractical. So this was an attempt to kind of narrow it down. And, just as an example, if you can see the Brightwood Golf Club is kind of in the middle, and just below it, there's a blue line that's Slater Street. And that's sort of there as a candidate local street bikeway route. And 11 years later, Regional Council approved the installation of a permanent local street bikeway on Slater Street. That was at council last week. So these are one of the tools in that plan that we use to sort of guide priority setting and that sort of thing. I would say of those 39 recommendations, most of them have been addressed. A lot of them have been achieved. A lot of them have been exceeded. A lot of them have, some of them have, we've gotten to a certain point with them, but, we're waiting for the money and the circumstances to get them built. So one example would be, so again, looking at that map on the upper right, you can see streets like in Dartmouth East, like Tacoma and Caledonia and Woodlawn, kind of the arterials and collector big streets out there are purple. And that means there's sort of like the idea that bikeway desired, not quite sure what the facility is. So we've done the functional planning on all those streets. We know how to kind of fit bike facilities on them. But right now we don't have council direction or really funding to build those. So we've advanced them, but we're not, we haven't finished it. So, there is a commitment to kind of renew the plan or to renew it somehow. I think we're still trying to figure out how to do that and kind of integrate it with an update of the IMP. So there's still plenty of work to do, but it is definitely time for a refresh of this plan. Next slide. So the next one that came along, so when we did the active transportation priorities plan, we had no idea that this one was coming, but 3 years later, council asked us to do an integrated mobility plan, which, it looks at all the modes. There is an active transportation chapter, and there's sort of 19 actions there. There's other sections that also have like AT actions, like there's a complete street section, for example. And really for us, this was sort of an opportunity to refine and prioritize some of those actions in the AT priorities plan. So, for example, we kind of pulled out of those, I forget how many, 39, we kind of pulled out 4 or 5 that we thought were kind of really important and strategic, and that we'd heard again from the public that should be there. And then like another one is, back in 2014, our really ambitious goal was to have like one protected bike lane. But then like, the practice, the engineering practice, the planning practice, and what we were hearing from the public had changed in quite dramatically. And then, the goal in the IMP came to be to develop a network in the regional center of connected, we called them all ages and abilities bike facilities, but, really to go from trying it to like a target and a commitment to building a network. And there is also kind of work right now happening on how to update the IMP. So that's kind of related to that, to the active transportation priorities plan question. And I suspect, and I'm just, often that would, as we're doing more of these bigger plans, the last time we did it, we had like a little subcommittee of ATAC that guided us. So, that could be a scenario going forward. And anyway, I guess have some pictures there on the side there that shows, one of my favorite IMP projects that really was not going anywhere, but the IMP kind of gave it the push, and that was on Herring Cove Road, kind of, some people call it the 500 block. And it was a corridor. You can see that upper picture where we gave pedestrians and bicyclists a really crappy, with lots of holes in it, paved shoulder to walk on. And then, and I didn't have a nice comparable picture, but it's an overhead there. We spent like something like $3 million. It was an incredibly expensive project to add sidewalks on both sides and buffered bike lanes on both sides. And, should have been there a long time ago, but they're there now. And what's nice is it's been it's been part of some positive changes in that part of the city, and some big improvements to the multi-unit buildings there, and just civilized, safe, comfortable ways for people living there to access transit, access shops, all that kind of stuff. So one of my favorite IMP projects. Next slide. So I just thought I would try, I don't know if this will work, but just to give you a bit of a flavor of who's doing what related to active transportation within HRM. So the first one is a new group that's only been around for about a half year, called the Strategic Infrastructure and Transportation Planning Group. About 3/4 of the people who used to work in my group now work there. So Mark Neener works there, and they do the functional planning for all of the active transportation and multimodal projects. And functional planning is sort of the process where we take was a line on an AT plan map and try to figure out, what it should be. How do we fit the bike lanes in? How do we have a multi-use pathway? What the sidewalk is, something like that. So they do those planning processes, and they're at ATAC all the time. You've seen them already. They are also responsible for those higher level plans for updates for the IMP and the Active Transportation Priorities Plan. They've got some great analysts there and monitoring experts, so they're there. And they also have the Transportation Demand Management Program, which is sort of our that's more the education and promotion, incentivization of getting people to take sustainable modes. It's for the infrastructure between our ears, changing minds and making people aware of sustainable options. SITP. And they're their own they have their own director or own executive director, and they're separate from Public Works, which is the group that I'm in. Next slide, please. So Public Works is my group, and there's all kinds of stuff happening here on active transportation. So in our little group, Active Transportation, we have the AT Grant Program, we have the Rural Active Transportation Program, we have the Shared Micromobility Program, the new Sidewalk Program. We're also working on that Active Travel School project. Our group next to us, or that we're actually a subgroup of, is Traffic, and they've got the road safety program. So the objectives to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. They program the signals, they design the signals at intersections, they do all the signs and the regulations. They decide where marked sidewalks go and how to treat them. So an important group. And then another group within Public Works that plays a key role is our Infrastructure Maintenance and Operations group. So those are the folks who are responsible for clearing the sidewalks and the bus stops and the streets and the bike lanes and the multi-use pathways. They do repairs. They do tactical maintenance. Next slide, please. Also in Public Works, we've got our Design and Asset Management group. So the design folks are our design engineers who, take those plans that the SITP group does, 30% designs, and then do the detailed design, take them right up to 100%, tender them, and get them ready for construction. The tactical group is there now. This is the group that's responsible for updating municipal design guidelines. And there is a group within them that keeps track of the asset condition of all the sidewalks and road and curb in the municipality and kind of schedules in recapitalization. And then the final group in Public Works, just to highlight, is the Project Delivery Group, brand new group. And they are basically a project management group that takes kind of larger, more complex projects through the planning and implementation. The AAA Bikeway Program Manager works in that group, and this group also oversees construction. And there's a picture there of just from Google Street View of construction of the South Park bike lane. And then there's a picture there just to the left of that of a tactical installation with kind of the surfboards and some street art. I think that's just behind Spring Garden Road around Artillery Place or something like that. So that's Public Works. Next slide, please. And again, just to give you a flavor of how some of the other groups within HRM play. So planning and development, they ensure that new AT is part of new developments according to standards. So there's a picture there of Broad Street, and you can see stuff getting built on the side, and nothing really, everything's still kind of getting built around it, but the street itself has a sidewalk on one side, a multi-use pathway on the other, and built to standard, that sort of thing. Our Parks and Recreation group plays a key role for active transportation because they're responsible for the maintenance and operations for active transportation facilities and parks. Chain of Lakes Trail is in the park. The Mainland North Trail is in a park. The Forest Hills Trail and Bissett Trail in Cole Harbor and parks. So, our group kind of plays the lead in kind of getting them built. And then we gift them to our colleagues forever to maintain and recapitalize. Corporate real estate, they're working with us all the time to acquire land or easements for new AT. Corporate communications, they support us in marketing and public engagement and, answering questions from the media, that kind of thing. Halifax Transit, kind of our key mobility partner in the sustainable transportation game, work with us on connecting bus stops to the sidewalk network, bike racks on buses, bikes on ferries, that kind of thing. This list could go on for quite a while, but, back when I started in HRM in 2012, it was sort of like 1.5 people working on AT. And now, it's basically spread so that a lot of people in HRM, have AT as part of their job. Next slide. Just wanted to get, so this, I'm going to caution, just be really clear. This is not detailed information on budget and finances from our internal systems or anything like that. This is just me kind of giving you folks a high level understanding of what the current budgets are for AT and how they play out. So there is one account, it's called the Active Transportation Capital Account. It's currently about $3 million a year. And it covers new sidewalks. It covers what we call regional AT connections, rural AT, the rural grant, the AT grant program, planning, design, monitoring. And we do get some, for those regional AT connection projects, we do get some money from a federal provincial infrastructure funding for that. So we can usually spend a bit more than $3 million a year using that money, but that's our HRM contribution. We have another account kind of specifically for the regional center AAA bikeways. Currently, we're like, that kind of goes up and down a bit, but you know, about $5 million a year is spent on that account. And right now we're still under an infrastructure funding agreement. So it's really only about $1 million a year from HRM going toward that, and about $4 million from provincial and federal funding. We also have multimodal projects that you know, build AT. So an example that's happening right now is Dutch Village Road. It's about a $9 million project. About 6.5 is coming from federal provincial sources, about 2.5 from HRM. And they're rebuilding the road, but they're also putting sidewalks on both sides. Dutch Village Road didn't have a sidewalk on one side. So we're fixing that and adding bike lanes. And then another account is the sidewalk recap account. So, you know, the sidewalks, once they get to the point where if we're doing a recap on the road, and we would also kind of fix all the defective sidewalks. And so there's about $2.5 million a year from HRM on that. And then of course, there's also operations budgets that cover winter maintenance, repairs, staff, and that sort of thing. Next slide. So just I have 2 or 3 more slides here. Just some successes that we've observed or that we think have worked that we can point to over the years is, you know, Halifax is just behind Victoria in Canada as the highest active transportation trip to work. So we're at about 12.3% of all commuting trips in HRM are by foot or by bike. I think that is probably sort of like really helped by the number of people who walk to work, you know, in the peninsula. It's a very high modal share there. We also see, you know, for all the noise, I'll call it, on bike lanes and bike facilities, the way I calm myself is I go to the IMP dashboard and I look at the counts of bikes on our facilities, and you know, they're continually going up year over year. So for Hollis Street, I just kind of the 2 facilities we have the longest we have about 5 years of data for Hollis Street and South Park. And if you just look at July 2021 and July 2025, there's 66% more people bicycling on Hollis Street and 41% more people bicycling on South Park. If you look at the other counters that have been around a little bit less, like Vernon Street or the Dartmouth Harbour Front or Almond, well, not Almond, Almond just went in. Windsor, again, you know, they're being used, and you know, for almost all of them, it's a kind of steady year over year growth in use. Which, you know, our network's not connected. You know, those are people are on those facilities, but then they're getting off and, you know, probably in some less protected situations, but more people are using them. We also see some really impressive numbers on some of our more rural, suburban rails to trails facilities. A facility that Holly knows well, the Salt Marsh Trail, is up like around 190,000 users a year. With I don't have the numbers. I would say likely about 2/3 people walking and about 1/3 people on bikes, but Just great numbers. St. Margaret's Bay Trail out on the southern end of the municipality, about 142,000 users per year. And these facilities are all thanks to the work of community volunteers who are building and maintaining these facilities. Successes, I don't know if 3 kilometers a year of new sidewalk is a success relative to the challenge, but it's something. We struggle with this one, but we've steadily been able to add. We had our first rural AT project completed in 2024 in East Preston Greenway. We've launched shared micromobility, and our tactical program, kind of where we can go in and make kind of more faster changes to try new things, is something that we tentatively started back around 2019, but it's going strong and has been a great way to get some near-term improvements, but just also try things at a lower risk. In the next slide, I have a few challenges that we're dealing with. We have some specific projects like, the McDonald Bridge Bikeway access on the Halifax side and the Africville AT connections that are progressing quite slowly, in part just because of the complexity of all the factors, that we're dealing with. So, for example, to get, right now you cannot walk on a safe facility, let alone bike to the Africville Church, Africville National Historic Site, pretty important part of the city. But to get that connection involves, new structures over the railway. It involves property acquisition. It involves trying to think about where a future McKay Bridge might be and not, put our stuff there. It involves working in tight spaces on Barrington Street. So it's we definitely haven't given up, and we think there's a way to do it. It's just taking a while to get there. Second bullet, we've got you've heard about it, some significant budget and kind of capacity challenges. So, we set a target for new sidewalk construction in 2023, and in 2024, we had to throw it out because there's just no money to build them. Bike facility costs and targets are being revisited just to, compare them to the financial reality. And just even all these facilities, we have upped our maintenance capacity, but, some of the facilities that we give to our maintenance colleagues are not easy to maintain. So, it's always kind of a challenge to meet that from a capacity perspective. I would say that, a challenge is sort of designing for all users. There's this concept called universal design. That is a concept and a worthy goal, but it's figuring out, how to add new facilities while still maintaining access for people using them, especially people with disabilities, is an ongoing challenge, something we're working on, but it's a work in progress. Another challenge is sort of constantly evolving design standards. When we're, trying to wedge some of these new facilities in, it's very context specific. So our designers are, they've got the Ottawa manual and the British Columbia manual and the NACTO trying to kind of figure out how to make things work, and it's not always it's never straightforward. And then the last bullet kind of speaks to I would say the current situation where we're in a very evolving planning and governance kind of context right now. So I think we'll see what the future brings, but it's definitely there's new things to manage and to factor into our work with some recent changes. Next, I think final slide. So just kind of coming back to ATAC, to you folks, you will still see for example, Emma Martin, who runs the AT grant program, is going to do a presentation next month on that program. as different plans and projects are kind of moving through the development cycle, you'll see staff kind of coming to this committee giving presentations. I think you'll continue to be like a strong link between HRM staff and your organizations and the public and kind of sectors that you represent. I think you have a great opportunity to kind of bring priorities and concerns to the Transportation Standing Committee for staff action. I think that I don't see that changing. And you will, we'll come back to you with the changes that were proposed as part of that HRM governance review. And that is all I have. So I hope that was a bit of an introduction, and hopefully we'll help you prepare you a bit for some of the discussions that will follow. And happy to take questions.
Thanks, David. That was super detailed. That was really good. I think that's sort of super helpful for new and existing members. So I'm including myself in that. That was very helpful. So we'll move into some questions. So members can speak for 5 minutes in the first round of questions. So I'll just run through the roll really quickly. And in the second round of questions, you're able to speak for another 3 minutes. So the first round I'll keep pretty structured. The second round, it's a small group, so we might just do a hands up system. So jumping into questions. So first up, excluding those that are away, first up is Holly.
Unmute myself. I think Halifax has done a really good job with what it's been handed and all the challenges you've had. We've done better than other cities and not as good as others, but that is what it is. I would personally like to see all the trails and parks connected now, but it isn't going to happen because there isn't the money, and some of us understand that. And I'd like to thank the staff for hanging in there with us, as well as all the volunteers that have stuck to it, because our volunteers are extremely dedicated, but also very demanding on you folks. And I'd just like to say we appreciate you. And keep up the good work, even though it isn't going fast enough.
Right on. Thank you, Holly. We definitely appreciate folks. There's so much work that happens to keep the Rails to Trails network and the community run led. It's something like 65% of the AT network are these kind of Rails to Trails, and in Cole Harbour there's some through provincial parks there, but 65% of it is like run by community volunteers, and really well, like just like some amazing facilities. But I hope that model can sustain itself, but we might need to be prepared to see if it doesn't. Anyway.
The only thing that I think that could improve on it is every time a developer starts building somewhere, whether it's commercial development or housing development, that they not only have affordable housing somewhere in there, which isn't our bailiwick, but they have to put in active transportation, period. It should be required. It was put in some developments earlier, and it never seems to happen. They always go over budget or whatever, and they have an excuse to not do it. And I could start raving on that point, but I won't.
Okay. So could I. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. So next up, Stephanie. So welcome to ATAC committee, Stephanie. So I'll pass to you if you've got any questions or comments.
Thank you, David, for the wonderful presentation. It was really, really great to hear all the things that are happening and have happened throughout HRM. I'm curious. I have a quick question, sort of going right back to where you started in the presentation, but both given the possibility of renewing the plan and I guess if the HRM AT budget shifts significantly during that time when people are coming back and rethinking and rejigging things with the AT plan and the AT budget, is ATAC able at that time to contest the removal of our ability to speak to issues that might be related to the budget to ensure that the AT priorities plan is actually able to move ahead as planned? I know that's not sort of settled out yet based on what you were saying, but just thinking of those shifts that will be happening in the governance issues, is there any way that we'd be able to actually make comments that would be related to the need, as Holly was saying, for us to be able to actually implement some of these projects and make sure the budget's there to make it happen?
I don't know for sure, but I think so. Part of the challenge with the budget is that it's I think there would be an opportunity for ATAC to provide your perspective on, you know, where you think the budget should be or where it needs to be and that sort of thing. I think probably your best way to do that is through some sort of like using your access to the Transportation Standing Committee, or you know, potentially just as something that you folks take on as your own, kind of that second category of involvement that I had there with the shared micromobility. So if someone on the committee wanted to, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, how budgets are set or compare what HRM is spending to other jurisdictions and request that, you know, HRM kind of hit certain targets, I think there's ways to do that. I think you probably need to kind of work together and be a bit creative about it, but I think so. But because the way that it was before, like in the terms of reference, it just didn't align with like how budgets happen or get developed. And there's also this kind of like principle that, you know, the first people to see the budget in the public should be like when it gets posted on the agenda, you know, a few days before regional council. So it's hard to kind of take specific numbers and specific projects to anybody else externally until that happens. So I didn't give you a clear answer, but I think, you know, I think there's ways that the committee can have a voice or bring your perspectives forward on budgets.
Super. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Next up, we have Maggie. Any questions or comments? You're just on mute, Maggie. So still muted. Not able to hear.
Sorry, I'm really having
That's better.
a challenge here. Are you hearing me now?
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
No? Okay. Sorry about that. Yet. No, very, very good presentation, and thank you so much, David, and really appreciated all the work that your group is doing and all the other groups as well. I guess just perhaps one question that comes to mind. I'm actually currently in Montreal, and of course, for those of you who've familiar with Montreal's bike network, it's pretty impressive. But I'm kind of amazed here. I've been doing a lot of biking here in Montreal, and just noticing the incredible range of bike lane designs, and I'd like to maybe talk about this at another meeting of our committee here. But I'm just wondering whether some of the, I think perhaps lower cost bike lane designs that you see in Montreal have been considered in HRM. You know, for example, using parked cars as a separator from traffic and those kinds of designs, which I believe are, you know, obviously much lower cost options than bollards and protected bike lanes in the sense we often think of them. Perhaps that's an obvious question, but just curious.
Yeah,
if you have
we've
thoughts
taught.
on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I know some of the facilities you're talking about there. And it's, you know, it's part of our toolkit. Sometimes our streets are so narrow here that, you know, to have a protected, if to have a bike lane protected by a car, by parked cars, you need sort of like, you know, you need a certain distance for the bike lane. Then you need a pretty good buffer because you don't want people getting doored, and then you need the car, and then, you know, so it's yes, the answer is yes, if we can. And we're always looking out for ways to kind of get safe, good facilities for the lowest cost. So it's part of how we're thinking about things too. And yeah, and, you know, City of Montreal, you know, they've been doing this for at least 10, maybe 15 years longer than we have. And folks there are great. You know, we reach out to them all the time. They take us on tours and stuff like that. So it's there's a good kind of like cross Canada. And before, when we talk to the United States, North American sort of like community of practice around these things. So we definitely try to learn from each other.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Next up, we have Roseanne.
Thanks. And thanks, David. As a new committee member, that presentation was fantastic. Really provided a lot of great background and context. So I really appreciate it. And I'd certainly like to echo my committee members' comments in terms of recognizing the wonderful work of staff and just reiterating how much we all support that. I have two questions. The first is following up a little bit on what Stephanie was talking about, and that really is this committee's relationship to the standing committee and what that process looks like, if it is something in our toolbox that we can use. So, and I'm not sure, David, if you're even the person who can answer this, but so what's the process? What triggers you know, a recommendation or a presentation to the standing committee? How does this committee function? What's the process for saying, okay, you know, something has happened, there's a policy change or a planning process that we have very strong feelings about and want to make those our advice known. So what's the process and what's the relationship from this committee to the standing committee? And I don't know, maybe the chair could speak to that a little bit, but I'm curious about what's the trigger and then what's the process for bringing something forward.
Yep.
So the process is probably for this committee to, you know, someone to propose a motion, someone to pass it, have the discussion, and vote on it. And what you actually do with that, you know, so I talked about before, it was like related to wanting staff to investigate a after school travel kind of program. It could, so, and Councillor Young is sort of ATAC's representative on Transportation Standing Committee. In the Transportation Standing Committee, every TSC has like almost a standing item, you know, report from ATAC. And often it's just, there's nothing to really report on. But I think there's probably a way for this committee to, you know, if there was something that you wanted TSC to consider, or we're looking for staff feedback on something or staff reaction to something that ATAC wanted to propose, it would basically be this committee kind of passing a motion, asking TSC to do something. And then at the next TSC, Councillor Young would sort of lead that discussion with his colleagues and ask them to consider what ATAC is requesting.
Great.
That's the way I've seen it work before. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And my second question, and it's something I've asked at the sort of previous couple of meetings I've been part of, and that really is, how does this committee really make sure that the advice and the comments that we're providing are useful, are pertinent. I'm trying to get a sense of kind of what the feedback loop is, because I know we come here and there are lots of different interesting presentations, and we all kind of give our perspective. So I'm wondering, how does that circle get closed in terms of, I know that, you know, in the minutes, the broad picture of those comments is captured. So I guess, how do we know as a committee that the information and advice and kind of questions and are useful? And then how do we track whether or not the advice that we're providing has been incorporated, and if it hasn't been followed, then why hasn't been followed? I'm just trying to make sure that I understand the information circle with this committee, and to understand how we as a committee and committee members can make sure that the information is useful and productive.
So I think it probably depend on, you know, the project or the initiative. I don't think there's a nice, neat circle. You know, the way that it's, you know, it seems to have sort of transpired on sort of a typical kind of scenario would be is, you know, we're in the middle of a planning project. We're at the stage where we want to sort of take, you know, maybe what we heard from the public, what our consultants are telling us, and sort of see what ATAC thinks about it. And then, you know, we would just sort of note that ourselves as, you know, as the lead planner, and look to the minutes and just, you know, follow up and make sure that if you or someone has suggested that we do this, that we do it. And then what you might see is in kind of the report to council that goes for the approval of a particular facility, you know, we would mention that, you know, we were at ATAC. You know, we might mention in the report that we were suggesting this treatment or this approach in part because of feedback received, you know, when we met with ATAC, or we might not even be that specific though. It might just be like what we heard when we were doing engagement with kind of key groups. You know, one thing that ATAC can also do is you can request that staff come to a meeting to kind of answer questions. So like, you know, if there was something that you know, we came to you on, and then it went into the proverbial, you know, ether, you know, like what happened? It's completely fair for you to ask the staff member at one meeting, you know, can you find out, you know, what happened with that? Or could you ask so-and-so to come back and give us an update? That's something that's happened in the past as well. It's not, you know, a really kind of more linear way would be for us to take a project that we're going for council approval for, go first to ATAC, then to Transportation Standing Committee, and then to Regional Council. But that kind of hasn't been the way that it's worked. But, you know, I know, I mean, that's my answer for now. But I feel like if you want, you know, if this is something that you want to hear that from people or want reports back, that's something that we could probably work on, just to kind of see how we could make that a little bit more linear, and, you know, help you folks kind of figure out, you know, what, you're spending all this time. It'd be nice to know like how it's influencing things. And I appreciate your question about like, you know, how best, you know, we get good comments in the, you know, just in this dialogue that happens. But also, to me, it's really important, like if you folks hear something and want to make sure that the board of directors of your organization is aware of it, like, you know, sometimes the follow-up happens after. Yeah, I think that's about as much as I can say on that one. But I think I understand where you're coming from. It's a good question.
Thanks, and I appreciate the response. And it's, as a new committee member, I'm just trying to put all the pieces together so I understand how it all works. And yeah, it's, you know, slowly unfolding meeting by meeting as the context becomes a little bit deeper. But I appreciate the response. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have new member Alexi. So welcome to the committee, and please.
Thank you, Nathan. And thank you, David, for the presentation. Very informative and very insightful. I just want to echo Holly in saying that I'm excited to see the network slowly become fully connected. I think that'll be probably one of the most transformative things for AT that could happen in Halifax. I think I'll also say that as someone who doesn't own a car, walks, bikes everywhere, and is also a professional planner, I think Halifax has a lot of potential in spite of the tenuous relationship that it's currently experiencing with the province. Um, I think there are a lot of ways that we can prevent the mistakes that other jurisdictions have made and kind of cut the line a little bit to really get some good things going. Having shared micromobility is a big one, and then evolving that over time and thinking about what multimodal hubs look like and how we connect different nodes around the region, I think can be really transformative. Um, I just have one question, which is maybe just for my own knowledge and hopefully for others' knowledge. What are some of the maintenance challenges at existing AT facilities? Like, what are some of the pain points that kind of are experienced? It's not something I think is really covered very often.
Sure. So one pain point is sort of winter clearing in kind of constrained areas. So, on the South Park bike lane, for example, we had to go to kind of minimums for everything to kind of fit it in. So the bike lane is about 1.7 meters wide. There's a bit of a buffer. Then there's parking, and then there's some fairly narrow travel lanes. And so the question, where do you put the snow in the winter? And so that's a challenge. It's less expensive for us to kind of build a bike lane like you have on South Park or Hollis Street, where you have the curb and then the bike lane is down at the road level, and then there's like about a 30 centimeter concrete curb there. And what we've created is a wonderful place for leaves, debris, gravel to collect in. We've created a great place for water to pool in Halifax's freeze-thaw cycles. So it'll, even if it should drain, but sometimes it doesn't drain for whatever reason. And so that becomes a maintenance challenge. Sometimes we have facilities that are sort of one way for like 3 or 4 blocks, and then they kind of shift character and dimensions for the next 4 or 5 blocks. And then, so that just means maintenance has to either kind of make the same equipment do something different, or like bring different equipment in for that other section. Their favorite facility for winter maintenance is like a 3 or 4 meter wide multi-use pathway or bi-directional bikeway, because you can just put a plow on the front of a half-ton truck and it's done. So when we spend more money, or when we put bike lanes in conjunction with larger scale recap projects, usually we can put the bike lanes up at sidewalk level or half sidewalk level, and those are easier to maintain, easier to clear, but they're like 2, 3, 4 times more expensive to build up front. So it's always kind of that tension. Yeah, those are some examples.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you. So we have Vice Chair Melina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to say thank you to David for remembering to do describing. Applause to you. Wow.
I've learned it's like I've been at a lot of these, Melina, and thank you for I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, you actually did very well. I'll give you an A- for today.
Okay, I'll take it.
Something to work for. And just to our new members, welcome Stephanie and Alexi. So you guys are aware as well. I believe Stephanie, you already know that I'm completely blind. So the more description, the better when things are up on the screen. I do have a few questions. You gave us the list of your working groups, the SITP, and the traffic one is what I'm interested in. And I don't know if you can show the information or perhaps send it to me, but who would be leading traffic right now?
Roddy McIntyre.
Oh, it is Roddy. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you said obviously Mark Neener's on the SITP, and who else is part of that team?
So Dave Regie, who used to be the executive director of Halifax Transit, is now the executive director of SITP. And then the manager under him is Mike Connors.
Oh, okay. So, and were they always in under the SITP, or that's?
No, it's a brand new group. So Mike used to have be under planning and development, and so now they've kind of taken a little bit from public works and some from plan, and kind of created this new group to focus on transportation planning and strategic infrastructure, which could be beyond just transportation things.
Okay. And I don't know if you can answer this or not, but given that this JRTA has been released, and then there's been whispers that it probably will affect the IMP. Any idea? I'm not going to hold you to it, but what do you mean? What is meant by it might potentially impact the IMP?
In part,
If you're permitted to answer.
We just don't know yet, I think is the best answer I can give you right now. So, and it's not even really my, it's really Mike Connors and Dave Regie who lead that. But I think,
Okay.
We've kind of been wanting to do this update to the Active Transportation Priorities Plan. We've been wanting to kind of do a new plan, and we wanted to do some updates to the IMP. But now that we have Bill 24 and we've got the Link Nova Scotia plan, I think we're just sort of trying to see how the lay of the land is shifted, and whatever we do next just needs to kind of acknowledge the new involvement of the province, and obviously work with them. But I think we're just trying to figure out how to do that. It's all new.
Okay. Right. I guess the reason I'm asking, my concern is that we have our inverted triangle where pedestrians are first, cyclists, buses, and then vehicular traffic. So that I'm hoping that will not be flipped around in any way, which you probably can't answer that right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't.
Okay.
And it's it'll be something. It's a great thing for this committee to keep an eye on and do your best to stay involved with, I guess.
Right. And I think Nathan and I have asked that there will be a presentation when those changes will be coming. So we'll be looking forward. We'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great info.
Thank you.
End of thought.
Thanks, Milena. So just last, thanks, David. That was great. I've just got a few comments more sort of broadly to the committee, I guess, sort of based on that and our recent conversations about what the purpose of ATAC is and what we can be doing. It's very heartening to hear that we were one of the two committees that sort of stayed. So that's a great sign. But this is not. This is just my sort of thoughts about sort of how this committee sort of can operate and what we can do. As David, you said, generally we can make presentations to the Transportation Standing Committee, or we can request to make a presentation to the Standing Transportation Committee. So my understanding is if anyone feels particularly strongly about a particular point or issue or project as a committee, or someone can raise a motion that we request to make a presentation to the committee. So we don't, that will be voted on. So obviously we do need an amount of agreement on that, but any member can raise that with the group. Also, we can ask the Transportation Standing Committee to request the staff to take an action. So in the same way, if someone feels particularly strongly about an issue or project, raise that in our committee, raise a motion, we can vote and decide how that will go ahead. And Roseanne, to your point, the sort of practicalities of carrying that through, in that case, I suppose we would sort of ask Oluwumi or the clerk's office to take that to the standing committee, and we'll go from there. So, and I think this has come up in previous meetings, in terms of our other, one of our other actions. We provide feedback to HRM staff and to different groups that come and make presentations to us. Like, we recently had presentations from Bird regarding micromobility. We don't need to reach a consensus. We don't need to present a combined opinion to these groups. In our capacity as members of interest groups or individuals, we are welcome to provide the feedback that we think is useful. And as David said, the AT staff take that on board. But as I said, anyone can raise a motion that we take a particular issue further. And just a reminder that any individual, any member of the committee can add an item to our agenda on the night of a meeting. So that comes up in section 3. So if there's anything you wanted to discuss specifically, you are welcome to raise it. That would be voted on. So there's no guarantee it would be added to the agenda. It would probably be easiest to raise that with Milena or myself in advance. So we do meet with David and Oluwumi before each meeting to confirm the agenda. So the more time we have, obviously the easier it is to fit it appropriately in. But anyone is welcome to raise an item to be added to the agenda. And then specifically, that was a great point, Roseanne, about sort of closing the loop of getting that information. That was a great point. And thinking about how we might do that, just adding to David's comments, if we provide, as a group, provide feedback to a presentation, or if we do take a step to make a presentation to the standing committee, in a future meeting, we can request to hear a follow-up from staff or a particular group. So, I guess it's not a guaranteed or an automated process, but if there's something, we've taken a specific action, we can request feedback from an individual and go about adding that to the agenda. And just as an example, if someone reads the minutes from the Transportation Standing Committee and there's a specific point, we could add that to our agenda for our next meeting to review as a group and think about taking actions. But just a reminder to the committee, obviously you're welcome to add anything you see fit or attempt to add anything you see fit. It will be voted on. As Milena said, we have made requests to hear more about the IMP. Brittany McLean, Project Manager for Micromobility, will be coming back in our next meeting to talk about some of the safety concerns we've had around the scooters and bikes and the parking situation. That was raised, and we're able to make a request to add that to the agenda. So, we can take those steps. But that's it from me. So we can move into the second round, just keeping in mind we only have just over half an hour left, and we still have another presentation from David. So if anyone has another comment they'd like to make in response to that, maybe just raise your hand. You will have 3 minutes, but just ask if you can try and keep it brief so we've got time for the next presentation. So are there any other questions or comments? Just raise your hand.
Mr. Chair, I just have a quick comment. It's Milena here, because I can't
Thanks.
seem to find my raise hand button on my keyboard right now. I was just going to mention quickly to Roseanne as well. It would be, I think, some valuable time to follow some of the Transportation Standing Committee meetings online, because you can quite often see here things that are being popped up, and whether if we have put in a formal suggestion to the Transportation Standing Committee, sometimes it does come up during their meetings, obviously, and check in with the group that you are with. Do your advocacy with whom you're representing, to be checking in and reaching out to whomever that you feel that needs to be done. So this is kind of like a gathering point for all of the groups with a common thread and a common desire to make sure that active transportation is moving forward. End of thought.
Thanks, Milena.
Yeah.
If there were no other comments or questions, invite David back to give an update on the, provide the active transportation update.
All right. No presentation for this one. So we just got a bit of input from staff today on some of the work happening right now. So over in SITP, Strategic Infrastructure and Transportation Planning, kind of the priority projects right now, they're still working with the province to get an AT crossing of the CN rail track on Bayers Road. Right now, we're going to have nice new bike lanes on Dutch Village, and we're going to have Chain of Lakes Trail on one side and a multi-use path on the other side, but still a bit of a pinch point. But I think we're close to that. I don't know if it's going to be built in 2026. I want it to be built in 2026. There's a bit more work now happening on Almond Street. So we have new protected bike facility on Almond Street from Windsor to Roby, no, to Agricola. But then we're not quite because it's Halifax, our street, narrows by half at Agricola Street. So anyway, there's some work to kind of figure out how to thread that. We finished our Parkland Drive public and external engagement, and now working on completing the draft functional plan for that one. Folks may have heard we're trying to figure out how to make a connection between the multi-use pathway on Dunbrack from Chain of Lakes up to Walter Havel into the Long Lake system. So Esprit is got some good input, and we have a few options, but so that's the Dunbrack Hale Pond Mutt project. We're just getting back into the north end of the peninsula. There's a planning project there to kind of figure out how to continue the local street bikeway south of Almond Street. Hope to take the Midtown Bikeways project, which includes Bell Road, Wellsford, the North Common, to council this fall. Yesterday, council approved the Slater Street local street bikeway. I've got staring at about 300 pounds of metal wayfinding signs here on the other side of my desk. Those are, the signs are ready, and Maria Jacobs is sort of gradually working with, people in parks, people in right of way, private contractors to get those installed. They'll be much more useful on the street than they are here in my office. There was some recent direction from council to factor children into planning, monitoring, that sort of thing. So there's some work happening in Mark's group on that. We are working on the West End connection using kind of Liverpool and streets in the Westmount area. That's working, really focusing on the intersections. The intersections are so important on these facilities, but some good options coming. More eco counters. Dutch Village coming. Brunswick Complete Streets projects under construction. We'll get eco counters there, and I finally got a contractor to fix the eco counter at the end of the McDonald Bridge on the Halifax side, so that'll come online soon. So there's I don't know if we had a council, but obviously there's been lots of discussion about the Regional Centre AAA Bikeway Network at council. They passed a motion in July asking us to come back this fall with sort of a list of bike lane projects and dividing up, the costs between the bike part of it and the pedestrian part of it and the other parts of it. Looking for alternative network solutions that could reduce costs, and looking for opportunities for additional funding sources. And we just got some direction to update our local street bikeway administrative order. So the administrative order goes back to like 2015, based on standards and guidelines and that sort of thing that existed back then. And so we need to kind of modernize those and come up with a slightly different approach, I think. So we'll be doing that. We just issued our request for proposals for the AT grant program. So if you're with a group that is responsible to build and recapitalize facilities, we'll help you pay up to 50% of those. The shared micromobility project, the pilot project with Bird, is about to go into phase 2. So that's sort of expanding the boundary of it. So really, the effort there is really to find the best places to park them. They call them nests, and to adjust accordingly. But so that should happen soon. They brought in new e-scooters, so their latest technology. So there's still some blue ones out, but there are these reddish orange ones that are the newer model. They're supposed to be better at sidewalk detection and a few other things. So hoping to see some improvements with that. What else? Working with the province. So the province has been building, in a few places, and a few places down the line are as they build new roads, they're putting multi-use pathways and stuff next to them. And then they gift them to HRM to own and maintain going forward. So one example is this new, it's too bad Elizabeth isn't here from the province, the Aerotech connector to kind of connect trunk 2 to the 102 at that point. Yeah, the 102. So it's got a nice paved multi-use pathway next to it. There's still a bit more work on some fencing, so it might not open at the same time as the highway, but that'll be coming online soon. A few of those, and basically we're one of the priorities right now is figuring out what our projects for construction are going to be next year. So that's always just balancing act between how much money is in the plan versus where those projects are in the design readiness process, and so that all kind of comes together in the next couple of months. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else. So yeah, anyway, those are some of the highlights of what's happening right now.
Great. Thanks, David. That was pretty thorough. That's good to hear. So we'll move into the question and comments time. We've got just under half an hour left, so I'll still run through the roll, but just keep in mind if you could just keep your comments a little briefer so everyone has a chance. Hopefully have time to go through a second round. So passing straight on to Holly. Any comments or questions?
Just thank you. You're thorough as usual, and I don't have any questions on any of that, believe it or not. So, thank you.
You're welcome. One thing I'd say about you, one thing that I'm just driving me crazy right now is that last year we built a connection that connected the Forest Hill Trail to the Bissett Trail in Cold Harbor. And the last I heard, we still hadn't gotten the utilities out there to move their poles. So it's a nice little connection, but I don't think it's finished yet. No, okay, you're shaking your head, so that confirms.
Thank you. Next is Stephanie.
Thanks so much, David. And again, I'm just going to echo Holly. That was very thorough and very informative as well. It's great to hear it. And I have all my scribbled notes here, so I'll just have to pull one little thing out of it maybe that I can,
Sure.
that I have a question about. And I guess that's just if you can maybe provide a little bit more information about the new standards that you were talking about and what the timeline on that would be and what the process would be as well. If you could just maybe expand on what you were mentioning there, if there is more to add.
What was that? New standards on?
I think you said new standards on, was it bike lanes that you were? It was something about updating the standards that were there previously in 2015.
Oh, yes. So for local street bikeways. So local street bikeways are one of our AAA facility types. Other places call them bicycle boulevards or neighborhood greenways or something like that. But the kind of the theory behind them is that you can create safe places for bikes to share the road with cars as long as there's not too many cars, and what cars are there are going, at about 30 kilometers an hour or slower. You don't want the cars to really kind of be in this way that they're kind of revving their engines behind the people biking. And so, back in 2014, 15, when we pulled it together, there was kind of a certain way of doing that type of work in an administrative order in HRM. And, we've been doing it since then, but the standards and the kind of guidelines on speed and volume there's new ones that we would like to look at and see if they make sense and could be implemented in Halifax. The other kind of issue that we've had with the administrative order is that it makes it, just the way that it's set up and the approvals happen, that it kind of makes it difficult to experiment and to trial things. And we still do it, but it's kind of this awkward kind of process that we have to go through. So that's something we want to look at. And then we also kind of want to look at, how much do we need to kind of embed in the administrative order, and how much is just like basically good design and good practice that, our engineers can use from the existing approach. So I think kind of the intent is to kind of look at all that and to see if there's better ways to do the process, if there's new guidelines we should use in terms of some of those thresholds, and just, anything that's, more than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old needs to be looked at again.
Super. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Thank you. Next is Maggie.
Hi, sorry, I had to leave the meeting for a minute. I was lost connection on my laptop, but I'm back in. I don't have any further questions, but thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Maggie. Next is Roseanne.
I'd just like to echo everyone else's comments, David, about how thorough your presentation was. It was really helpful. I have a quick question, and it's kind of following up on Stephanie's comments, and that is, around the local bikeways, and there's all kinds of new signage, new types of painted lanes. In the intersections, there's all kinds of new stuff. And what I've heard from folks that I've been talking to is that, people think it's great, but they don't really know what to do when they're driving. It's new. There hasn't been sort of a concerted public education, public awareness campaign about what the new symbols mean, how to be a good driver and be an ally to cyclists and pedestrians in some of the new laneways that have been constructed. So I'm just wondering, is there any plan with the comms folks to maybe do a broader kind of public awareness, public education about what these the new way of traveling means and how we can support one another, and because I think there's a fair bit of confusion about who has right of way and what does this mean, and things change abruptly. And I'm just wondering if there's been some conversation around a broader kind of public education campaign.
There's been some conversation, but just hearing you make that point made me kind of think we need to come back to it. I agree with you 100%. I'm in Antigonish all the time. That's where I'm from. I live in rural Colchester County, and all my neighbors are like, "What are you guys doing to the streets there?" So I get it. And I like one of the things you said there is about approaching it from we're all in it together, we're all sharing the road together kind of perspective. And usually the changes that we're making are kind of intended to, with that goal, to kind of help people kind of navigate the space together and more safely. But I love your idea, and I'll raise it with our TDM group that kind of leads those communications things.
Great, much appreciated.
You bet. I like that.
Thank you. Next is Alexi.
Yeah, thank you again for that, David. I have a couple questions, but I'll just ask one. For the motion that council passed in July about the cost and reconsideration of different capital projects, is it broken out? Like what's the division of the breakout supposed to look like? Does it include also the cost of road work, or is it just focused on like the cycling element, like AT elements? Like how are they thinking about the distribution of what they want to see the cost at or of?
All right. Milena, can I post something in the chat, or is that just too awful for you?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Warning. I'm warning you ahead of time.
Great, thank you.
So this is the motion here. So those should be bullets. So they want a list of bike lane projects with their estimated budget requirement, but separated into, what's the general traffic? What are we spending on public space? What are you spending on pedestrian amenities? And what are the bike lane parts of it? So it'll be interesting to see how that gets broken down. Often it's really difficult to kind of even do that, but it'll be an opportunity to educate folks. And then the second one is sort of like, are there alternative network solutions that could be cheaper? So either could we, if there's a place where we were gonna like do the quote Cadillac bike lane, could we like and Maggie, I think, was said it, some of the facilities in Montreal where they use parked cars to separate. Or, do we go in a block and use a local street bikeway for something like that? And then again, just looking to see. So, when we first kind of did the cost estimates for build out, it was based on some initial projects that we had built and some optimistic assumptions back in 2017 when we were new to all this stuff, and we kind of costed it out around 25 million, and now it's getting close. It's 93 million or something like that. So, going and finding some external funding sources for that is something that they want us to do as well.
Thank you.
I'm always nervous when Alexi asks. He's got a PhD in stuff, so I'm like, oh my god, I hope it's not like too hard, but. Thank you.
I never doubt your ability to answer my questions, David. I wouldn't worry.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Vice Chair Milena.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to echo what Roseanne had said as well, David. This question about the education part has been brought up for as long as I've been on this committee, which has been significant, and the lack of education with any new infrastructure or bike lanes or whatever is happening is not happening. Unless you are in it and you're part of it and you're going to the specific website or Shape Your City, which majority of people are not drivers in four-wheel vehicles. 100% are not. So we need that. Television, radio, whatever, to put it out there, because people are confused. Even my cycling friends they have no idea what's going on with some of this new painted stuff. On the other end of educating is, and I've been asking every year, where is the evaluative process? After something has been built, we're hearing what we heard prior to build, but we're not hearing what we heard after the build. And I've been as you know, with many of the stakeholding meetings. Liverpool bike lane right now is causing massive headaches on London Street, which is where I live. The vehicles don't want to go that little roundabout, et cetera, and so they're just zooming right through on London Street, and unsafely. Just the other day, I almost got hit with the driver that told me where to go because I slowed my walk in my right of way on Dublin and London. Okay, so the evaluator process, and we need this evaluator process to go to the public, because on the accessibility issue, as you know, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but I can no longer cross the intersection at Allman and Windsor, because we made it very clear from the blind and partially sighted not to angle a crosswalk. And the big team, I won't mention the name, did not listen. Okay, and now what's going to happen on Brunswick Street? There's probably at least 2 crossings that I will not be able to cross because of the design. And the evaluation part of it, at the end of it, needs to be publicized, done, and it has to be part of the program of all of this infrastructure. So if you can take that somewhere to whoever's
So
going to
yeah,
be in
one
charge.
thing, I think so one thing I didn't mention that I'm just pulling up an email. So our road safety group is going to putting some cameras up. They've put them up already at places like where we've got on South Park, for example, in Hollis, where we've got bike lanes and bus stops kind of combined. They're going to put cameras up at South Park and Sackville. They're putting cameras up at Windsor and Almond, and at Almond and Gladstone. So we'll get some information about how those are operating, near misses, all that kind of stuff, and we can come in and I can ask them to come in and give a presentation on those results to this committee. And this committee can ask, can just ask the clerk's office, can folks come in? So. So there is some, I guess the good news, there is some evaluation and some attempt to capture that data, and we can come back and report it.
That's great. What about asking the users if they're liking what has been finished, so we can work better and improve and improve and improve?
I'll ask the folks doing the study if sort of maybe it's like intercepts, having people there, just asking opinions. I like that idea.
Yeah, great. Thank you. End of thought. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go last. Only a couple of comments from me. So one, that's super exciting to hear about the wayfinding signs. I'm hoping to see some blue route markings on some of those signs going up on the Dartmouth side. I think that's part of the plan. That sounds promising. There we go. Thank you for sharing that. That's it feels like a milestone. That's great to see. We're very excited about that. And then my other comment.
Elena, I just held up one of the signs in my office that's got a blue root symbol on it for Nathan to make him smile.
Thank you.
And then just my other comment, going back to the what you posted in the chat there. So the regional council directed staff to review the AAA network. The comment about reviewing a review of alternate network solutions that could reduce further costs. I mean, it's not specified in that comment, but I hope there would be, and maybe you can talk to it a bit more, David, that there'd be a but there. So could reduce further costs, but still meet the safety requirements and,
Yeah, I think that was very much the spirit of the motion from Deputy Mayor Mancini. Like, I think there's still very much a desire and a goal to make a connected network, and where we do have the connections starting to happen, you're like seeing, oh my god, it's when they happen, it's awesome. But yes, we're going into it with that kind of assumption, still trying to make the network.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that was it for me. So we have a few minutes left. So for the second round of comments or questions, if you've got anything you'd like to add, please just throw up your hand or click on the raise hand button. Alexi, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I just have one quick comment just to piggyback on what folks were saying about safety. I'll note that it does feel as a pedestrian and also as a cyclist that at many of the like zebra intersections where there's a beg button, that it's very hard to get drivers to respect them. And I find whether it's because they're not looking both ways when they want to make a turn, like either like a left turn across traffic, or whether it's because they're just not interested in stopping. I know, like, I've encountered many almost near misses. I've watched, like, well, my friends have also encountered those. And I don't think it's a question to be answered like in 3 minutes, but are there any attempts or consideration of transforming some of those intersections into full stop signs instead of being just, and I'm sure that there's like a traffic modeling question as well about flow, but I feel like there are many of them throughout the city where either because of their proximity to, like I think about the ones on North Street where like there's like pretty egregious like traffic violations as people rush to get on and off the bridge, and then they decide that they're not interested, and kind of once they get the momentum they don't want to stop for a pedestrian. So yeah, it's a broader question I have also, like for across the net, like the, I guess the cycling and walking and just road network. But has any thought been given to transforming some of those crosswalks into being just full stops?
Not that I know of, but it's not something I'm very close to. The traffic department and the road safety folks, they would get like 311 calls or requests from a counselor to look at something because the counselor heard from constituents, and then they might do kind of that monitoring thing, kind of like verify it, sort of see how, and then if it is like a serious safety issue, that's when they would kind of look at alternatives and look for opportunities to improve them. But it's a bit of a process, as you can tell. But yeah, letting your counselor, letting 311 know about those can't hurt, because they will go to a traffic analyst. And if a traffic analyst that's like the fifth one that they've gotten that month, or it's known to be, then it gets attention. There's a group here to kind of set up to do those evaluations. The North Street ones, I know exactly what you mean. There's a lot going on there.
Yes, there is. Complex intersections.
Yeah. Thank you. And Holly, you've got your hand up. Sorry, Holly, you're just muted.
It would work better if I pushed the button, wouldn't it? I'd just like to mention here, and I realize it's not this committee, but there is a provincial ban on the woods and a fire ban, even in your own backyard, please. We're keeping the firefighters very busy as it is with the situation in the woods naturally happening. But if we can get it out to all our people everywhere, there's no exceptions to the rule, because we're getting a lot of violators on the trails and in the parks. And my neighbor across the street with the bonfire in the backyard the other day. It's not allowed. Just call for help. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. That's timely reminder. Any final comments or questions from anyone for David? I think that looks like it. Thank you again, David, for all your input. You had a big one for you tonight.
Yeah, usually I come with like a bunch of staff colleagues to like do it. So this is my turn. Happy to do it.
Very much appreciated. That's great. So before we move on just to the final points, Vice Chair Milena just wanted to briefly mention, briefly make some comments.
Yes, to everyone, and spread it to your networks that on Shape Your City, Halifax Transit has a survey about some of the bus routes, which may or may not be involved in your neighborhoods in your area. So please go on to Shape Your City, look for the Halifax Transit survey and fill that out, because some of our connectors are not working that great, and it's important too, because buses are part of active transportation, like walking and cycling. So do remember and share that Shape Your City link. And I also just had sorry, Mr. Chair, a quick question for Alawumi, if I may. I failed to hear, I believe this is the second or third time Councillor Young is not present. Was there a reason that we haven't had a counselor in our meeting? It's a little disconcerting to me. If you can answer that, Alawumi, not sure.
Oh, okay. I did not get any regrets from him, but definitely I'm going to follow up after the meeting.
Thank you, because like I said, I'm pretty certain we are to have a counselor at the meetings, and this is, if not the third, it's 100% the second.
Sure, I'll follow
Thank
up
you.
on that. You're welcome.
Thank you. End of thought, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Milena. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for Alawumi following up with Councillor John Young. So that brings us to the end of the updates. We don't have any added items. The date of our next meeting will be 18th of September 2025, starting at 4:30. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. So with that, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn today's meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee.
So moved.
Yeah.
So moved. Thank you, Milena. With that, that brings an end to our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and look forward to the next meeting.